The October 15th PUSD Governing Board meeting. I'd like to welcome everybody to this lovely fall weather we're having, which is really nice. Nice to feel finally. And Kelsey is reporting that we're going to get snow on Saturday, so
great.
That's good. But no snow days. Yes. No snow days on Saturday. Okay.
Everybody has a day off.
No, thank you.
All right. Good deal. We are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Vanessa, if you could lead us, please. We'll start with the approval of the agenda. Item 4A, consider approving the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Agenda passes. Item 5, approval of the minutes. Item 5A, consider approving the minutes from the regular study and voting session meeting of September 10th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I just do want to point that we do have a quorum. I should have done that at the beginning. Cara Woods will be, she's running late, but we do have a quorum, so just want to state that, sir. Item 6, presentations. Item 6A, social studies curriculum update. Kelsey.
Good evening. So I think it was over the summer, at some point during one of our board meetings, you guys asked for an update regarding the social studies curriculum that we adopted about a little over a year ago. So I'm happy to share some information with you. Social studies is a little bit different because we don't have data that I can report to you on how successful those materials are. So instead, what we have done is we decided to survey all of our teachers, and we asked them some specific questions. I'm going to give you their feedback regarding those questions. So the first question that I asked them was, how often are you able to use TCI? How comfortable are you with those materials? And what you can see here is a variety of answers. So you've got 30% of those respondents said they use it daily. We did have one teacher who said they have not really used it yet. So what you will see is in our grades 5 through 12, where we have a dedicated social studies class, they're using it every single day. They're using it frequently. In our lower grades, what we're seeing for K4 is that oftentimes those teachers are combining ELA and social studies content and often using their ELA content to teach social studies standards. So they're using it a couple times a week if they're lucky. However, we are really focused on materials that align to standards. And as we've talked about before with every curriculum adoption, most curriculum don't align perfectly with Arizona standards. So we're having to supplement in pieces. So that's why you do see this. However, it is being used pretty regularly within the classroom, just different occasions. How well are they finding that TCI aligns with social studies standards? If you remember our adoption process, our main focus was to make sure that those resources aligned with what was expected through Arizona state standards. And through that adoption, we said, yes, absolutely it does. Here you see that some say perfectly aligned, some say mostly aligned. What I will tell you is no curriculum is perfectly aligned to Arizona state standards. Does it have the majority of what we need? Yes. Some grade levels have to supplement less. Where you see here, the somewhat or even the not at all, that happens to be particularly our third grade. Third grade is Arizona state standards, and so they have to supplement a lot. They're using lots of different resources in order to meet Arizona state standards because it's so Arizona specific, and no social studies curriculum had an Arizona specific third grade content that we were able to pull from. So the question was, this third question was, what are the strengths of TCI? What do you appreciate it now that you're implementing it within the classroom? High engagement. This was one of the pieces that came out when we did our adoption process. When we were able to use those materials within the classroom, they found that the lessons and the content within TCI was incredibly engaging for students. That's actually what made it stand apart from the other resources that we looked at. Lots of resources for them to choose from. So there's not just one way to teach something. They have a variety of different ways and resources that they can use. So a lot of them use text for that, and so they might just have not just one text that will teach that, but they have a variety to choose from, and oftentimes they're at different reading levels, which is very nice for our students. That goes into support and scaffolding for differentiation. It provides different reading levels. It provides different ways that students can respond or interpret information. Lots of project-based learning, not just question and answer, but lots of ways to get them involved and really thinking through the content that they're experiencing. And then flexibility. There's digital tools, there's in-person tools, there's lots of ways for students to be able to interact with those materials, and ways for teachers to be flexible with their pacing. So they could take content and extend it or shorten it. There's lots of ways that they can add that variation in. This next question we asked was, what concerns do you have with TCI as you're implementing it within the classroom? We always are learning new lessons as we implement curriculum. Reading level is something that was a concern for some of our teachers. There wasn't a lot of teachers who responded with this. I believe it was 2. But sometimes that text is seen as rigorous, and not every text that's embedded in that curriculum has different reading level variations, but there are some. Time and alignment issues. So sometimes those lessons could take longer to complete than just one class period, and we see that often with curriculum. However, there are ways that they can change that. They can shorten. It just means that they're cutting things out or they're adjusting that content a little bit. The one concern, different than what we talked about before, this was brought up during the adoption process. The one and the biggest concern that we had was in a first grade unit where we talk about family, which has been talked about in first grade forever. There is a picture that shows a family composed of 2 moms and of 2 dads. And we did have some teachers who were uncomfortable with presenting that to first graders. So we, even during our adoption process, discussed that and talked about that as that's a piece that they can omit. They don't have to, and they shouldn't be talking about that. That is definitely something that should be discussed in the home. So this one teacher who was not on that committee wasn't involved as heavily in those conversations, so she felt like she just wanted to bring that up. Her principal did a wonderful job of following up with her, making sure that she was comfortable making those adjustments and how to present the family unit to her first graders in a way that she felt comfortable with.
And Kelsey, if I can jump in really quick.
Yep.
When this came up in the survey, we were reminded, oh yeah, there was that piece that we talked with people. Probably best not to bring that up. So we directed principals to get with their first grade teachers and say, hey, there's lots of materials there. Let's not introduce that one because we don't want to have questions coming up that aren't age appropriate with first graders and whatnot. If families want to talk about that at home, great. That's up to parents, but that's not what we're going to lean into in our schools. Good.
And honestly, the majority of teachers who responded to this survey said they had no major concerns at this point after a little over a year of implementation. The next question was, have they heard concerns from students, from families, from community members regarding the content or the lessons within TCI? There was one teacher who identified a concern, not necessarily with the content, but there were some rumors swirling around, primarily with kids, around the format. And kids were thinking that it was just an online platform, that they were just going to be on the computer all the time. The teacher said she clarified that within a couple weeks. They knew that that was absolutely not the case. And that really came from students, not necessarily parents. And then the 19 others who responded to this survey said, not at all. They have not heard any concerns over content. So questions?
I have
Yes.
one. Does beyond textbooks help whatsoever in the social studies genre, particularly with third grade teachers?
Yes, it does.
It is helpful. Okay.
Yeah, so they do have a bank of resources aligned to every single standard that do go with those Arizona-specific standards. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing is that most of those are created by Arizona teachers. So.
So if it's not aligned, isn't that what the digs is for, or do we not use that now?
Oh, we use the digs every single day. Yes. So what we do with our digs, our instructional guides are our pacing guides. So what we do is we map out our standards for each quarter, and then we intentionally match resources to that. So they have that every year. So you will see TCI resources on all of our social studies digs.
And are we going to be getting some kind of presentation on beyond textbooks?
Sure.
More than what we had,
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that.
what the teachers are finding?
Uh-huh.
Because if it supplements TCI, the social studies, it aligns with all of the new curriculums then?
It aligns with the standards. So what Beyond Textbooks does is they
That's-
have each standard broken down, and then they do have some teacher-created materials that align to that. So they do have lessons and things that are embedded in there, but they're all supplemental. Does that answer your question?
Just maybe.
Okay, sorry, can I clarify further? What else can I
Well,
clarify?
I'm not happy that we have all these new curriculums that were with all bells and whistles and really sold to us, but we're already supplementing each subject with yet another curriculum that I don't have the information about.
So Beyond Textbooks is not a curriculum, it's just instructional resources.
It's a supplement.
It's a supplement, yeah. So there are materials in there that can supplement. What I will tell you is every single content area, we're going to have to supplement for. Textbooks and curriculum are not built and created based on Arizona standards. They're closely aligned because the foundation of our standards is Common Core, but Arizona changed enough that we do have gaps that we have to supplement. So it doesn't matter what curriculum we choose, and it's not a lot. It's normally 1 to 3 standards that they're having to supplement for, or they're supplementing for enrichment or possibly some reteach opportunities. Yeah, but I want you to be assured that the foundation of what we're using are the adopted resources that have been approved through curriculum adoption.
And you gave a perfect example of that a couple of minutes ago with the social studies. Third grade hits a lot on Arizona history and Arizona culture and whatnot. There's no
Yeah.
nationwide curriculum that's published that matches the Arizona standards
No,
for third
there
grade. And so
wouldn't be,
we'll
would
have
there?
to supplement there. That type of a thing happens occasionally with different state standards across the various subject areas. It's not a major facet of things, but it's an important facet
Yeah.
of nearly every curriculum.
And so if third grade's a great example, thank you for bringing that up, because we did not buy textbooks for third grade for that reason, because we knew that they weren't going to be used the majority of the time. They have other resources they had to use for that.
Kelsey, what issues have you been brought to your attention from any parents of students with this curriculum?
None,
No, no.
none.
And none brought to the teachers'
Nope,
attention?
so that was, let me go back. That was this question. We asked intentionally to make sure that things that were going home, things that were discussed. I did have one teacher reach out to me, not within the survey, but she just followed up and she said, I have had parents ask about how we teach something or what that looks like. And she goes, I've directed them to the curriculum, I've given them the resources. And she goes, I've never had a single follow-up after I've given them those materials. And it's only happened, a couple of times, but once they see that content, they realize that they're not seeing those concerns.
If you go back one more slide too, so on that third bullet, just to clarify, we omitted that. That is, we decided that's not a school subject,
Correct.
correct? I just want everybody to hear that. Okay, so
Yes.
that's to be taught at the home. Okay, good.
Correct. And the way it's structured within that text, you would have to intentionally teach that and discuss it for students to understand what those pictures even meant. So,
Yeah, it's not a major part of the unit that delves
No,
into it. and
not at
says,
all.
Some families have 2 mommies.
No.
There's different pictures of families, and there's 2 pictures that do have 2 dads, 2 moms.
Yeah.
We just say, hey, let's not present those pictures. Let's just talk about the other pieces.
Thanks for addressing
That's what we've
Correct.
directed principals to direct their first grade teachers to do.
Kelsey, I don't know if you had thoughts in mind prior to doing this survey, but the responses that you got from teachers on how much they're using, was that something, would you have anticipated that level of usage, daily usage, weekly, semi-weekly, or is that about what you thought it would be? Is it less, more? What did you anticipate?
I really expected that our 5-8 teachers were using it pretty consistently because they have a dedicated social studies block. Where when you're looking at K4, their structure is entirely different. And I see, Jane, you're laughing because I know you know what that K2 structure looks like. They're teaching all of those foundational skills that they're only teaching social studies once or twice a week. As a silo. Instead, they're embedding that within their ELA blocks as well. So it is what I expected, yes.
So it's not that they don't find the curriculum useful.
No.
It's that we only teach social studies once a week in K through 4, so
Yeah.
we use it once a week.
Time is the big issue.
Okay.
They're so heavily focused on ELA, math, science, and social studies is the one that gets brought in at least once a week.
Right.
I'm not sure I would say that it means we only teach it once a week. I would think at K2, it means that we introduce it in a lot of our reading activities.
Yes.
What stories
So
we're
it's-
reading.
right,
It's
it's built into
embedded,
other
and we take a look at the
activities.
standard and we work it into the ELA.
Right.
So
The
it's being taught.
instructional
but-
minutes, you'd have to have it scheduled for
A lot more.
weekly,
Yeah. And that's a good point. It's taught almost every single day. That content is embedded within almost every ELA subject area or unit that we have. But if they're teaching just TCI materials that are not covered in there, it's probably
Right.
once a week.
So maybe they take it from a standpoint of this is your ELA lesson and here's some TCI content. Now, that's
Correct.
a bad way to say that, but here's some TCI
Yeah.
content that we're bringing in.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? All right, thanks, Kelsey.
Yes.
You might as well stay up there. but,
I'm going to stay up here.
All right. We're gonna, so we'll be discussing item 6B, PUSD math and ELA scores. Kelsey and Kayla.
All right, so I'm excited tonight to introduce you to Kayla Rangel, who's our new testing coordinator. And what I will tell you is she had some giant shoes to fill when she walked in because Renee Sangraber had been here for a really long time doing an amazing job. And Kayla's jumped in very seamlessly, and I love working with her, I'll just say. So she's really going to do most of the talking through this. I'll kind of help her out, but she's going to go through our scores from last spring with you. Hello.
Okay, so first we just wanted to do kind of a brief reminder of what Arizona Achievement Assessments are required for us to take. So our AASA grades 3 through 8 take ELA, so that's reading and then a writing portion, as well as mathematics. ACT Aspire is taken by grade 9, and that includes English, reading, science, math. And then ACT is our grade 11 cohort, and then that gives us a composite, as well as all of those subjects. And then AZ Sci is grades 5, 8, and 11, and that covers science. And then a brief history of our great states ELA and math assessments, because we've gone through a few changes. So 2015 through 2019, our assessment went under the name of AZ Merit. And then 2020 to 2021, we have AZM2. And then 2022 to now, we have AASA. And then just once again, that breakdown. So 2015 to 2019 with AZ Merit, that was 3 through 11. And then AZM2, they kind of brought it down to 3rd through 8th and then 10th grade. And then with our current ASA, it's just 3rd through 8th. With all three of these, though, the performance levels, so minimally proficient, partially proficient, proficient, highly proficient, they did stay the same. The item bank remained the same. We did have a testing platform change, so from Tide to Pan, if you know what those are. And then it is really important to note that Arizona adopted Common Core standards in 2010, so pre-AZ Merit, and then they did revise them to our new AZ standards in 2016. So really what we want to look at is that 2015 through current, because prior to that, we're looking at different questions. We're looking at different tests where the data is not, you're not comparing apples to apples. All right, so hopefully through this, I'll be able to answer these questions for you. How does PUSD assessment performance compare to its peers, the county as well as the state? How do the various proficiency levels in state assessments influence our interpretation of student achievement? And then what do they reveal about areas for growth? And then what are those trends that we're seeing, and how do those impact our district performance? So the trends in state performance as well. All right, so we're going to start with ELA, and we have the breakdown. Kelsey did tell me I have a laser. I was a classroom teacher. I'm a pointer. So we have first all of our grades, so that's the average for all of our testing grades. And then it just breaks it down by the grade levels. So we have our averages for our percent proficient and highly proficient students in PUSD. And then you can see our two neighboring districts, our county, and then state. It is, whenever you're looking at the data, it's important, I think, to point out that there's only 3 places, like individual places, where we are not performing higher than whether it's our neighboring districts, the county, or the state. So we're doing well.
Kayla, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
I've had people interpret this, I'll look at the Arizona column, all grades, 40% in ELA. Does that mean that 40% of kids in Arizona can read?
No, it does not.
What does that mean?
It just means on that one day, on that test, 40% of Arizona students were either proficient or highly proficient.
So they scored in one of the top 2 categories
Yes.
on the test that day, either highly proficient or fully proficient,
Yes,
and everybody else scored partially proficient or minimally proficient, so.
correct.
Okay. So that either indicates to me that the bar is really pretty high, or most every kid in Arizona is just not very smart. One of those 2, probably, right?
I don't see it that way.
Okay.
This next slide, we're going to show you a little bit more information about some different perspective on this data, because I do think this is incredibly misleading. And I think the fact that the state has qualified this as passing scores
There's the
is
problem.
incredibly misleading. And we'll show you why that's the case on this next slide. And that's why we've decided to just tell you that that number that they're using as passing is really just your proficient and highly proficient students.
Okay, what's the exact date on this test? Do you know, was it April of 20, when was it?
April of 2023.
It was April of 23.
Yeah.
No, 24, sorry.
Four,
April
yeah,
of
this
24.
calendar year, last school year.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
thank you.
Yeah.
I think I,
And ELA takes in components of both reading and writing, correct?
Yes.
So this is not just a reading score. This is not,
Correct.
again, it's not to suggest only 40% of kids in Arizona can read. On those 2, the combination, the aggregation of data from both the writing test and the reading test, 40% of kids in Arizona, aggregate, 3rd through 11th grade,
Yeah.
scored in one of the top 2 scoring categories. Okay.
Correct.
And I think the takeaway from this data comparison is we're not a poor performing district. We are a top performing district within the state, and we'll show you some further numbers in the future. But we are not failing, and our students are not failing. And so I hope that that's the message that you can take away from this today, is that these are numbers, but you have to look at the context of those numbers. And within context, we are outperforming most people within the state of Arizona. So that's just what I want you to take away from this one.
All right, so as Kelsey kind of alluded to, we've done a little bit of a further breakdown because the prior data was just showing those top 2 categories, proficient and highly proficient. So in this first chart, this category right here is what you just saw previously, and we're still talking ELA here. And then this category right here brings in those partially proficient students, because those students, while partially proficient, they're not failing. They have understanding of their grade level content. They just have some gaps. So, and whether those gaps, I mean, it could be a point difference, right, from being partially to proficient. So we wanted to bring those in, as well as the State Board of Education brings those in as well. So the Department of Ed, as Kelsey said, talks about passing, right? It's just those top 2 performing categories. The State Board of Education, who gives those A to F letter grades, they include partially proficient in their calculations. So that's why a lot of times if you're trying to make sense of this data with what the State Board of Education is putting out, it might feel like there's a disconnect. And that's because they're giving credit where credit is due, which is to our partially proficient students. And you can see it is, I mean, in some cases, a drastic difference because we're getting a better picture of how our students are performing because there's more students included in the overall proficiency.
And that is a much better reflection. If you're really truly looking at where our kids are and where they're at academically, that second column is a much better reflection of where our students are. Does that still show that we've got room to grow and improve? Absolutely. Are we still working towards that every single day? Yes. But it's not as dire as what you see on that left-hand side when you're just taking into account half of our students.
And then we pulled this chart right here, the sources at the bottom, and it kind of shines, hopefully, some clarity on our traditional, the letter grade system, so the A+ to F, and then our proficiency grading, so using those proficiency labels versus percentage grades, which usually fall right along with letter grade, and then GPA. So we have 4 levels of proficiency grading, so highly proficient, proficient, partially, minimally, whereas the letter grade system has 5 letters, right? So while it does not completely, like, cohesively, nicely translate, it does do a decent job of showing kind of what these mean in that proficiency grading. And it's also important to note that these 2 bands are, I mean, these 4 bands have proficient students in them. There's just different levels of proficiency. So those A to A+ students, those are our highly proficient students. They have the content and then some. Our proficient students who are performing at grade level, they're where we want them to be, that ranges from an A- to a C on that traditional grade scale. And then our partially proficient students, no, remember, not failing, just have some gaps that we're working on filling. Those are those C- to D. And then minimally proficient, these are what we would consider our below grade level students. So especially looking at this, I mean, the vast majority is proficient or on their way to proficient. And it's just those minimally proficient where they're getting those heavy interventions. And we have identified them, but they are, and you can see in the data, they're not the majority.
So how can we change this context to go from a passing, which is A, B, C, D, F scale, to understanding so that people will understand what proficient and highly proficient actually mean? Because there is a big difference there.
Yeah.
And, you know, functionally, you know, I would say functionally, students that are partially proficient are passing their classes.
Yes.
You know, students with a C are passing their classes and getting out, and they may go on to do fantastic things out in the world because they can do everything that they need to do to survive. It's not, this terminology of proficient, highly proficient, and partially proficient, I think casts a bigger failure badge on students than passing a grading scale does. But yet the state is saying if you're not proficient or highly proficient, you're not passing. And that's in the media, that's in conversations with people in our community, and that isn't the case.
No. And I think it has to start there. They need to do a better job of explaining that data because that's a barrier that's hard to overcome. We can talk about this all day long, but until you really see that breakdown and you get deep in the weeds of this, it's hard to understand. But I think the most important thing that you guys that we talked about is our partially proficient students are not failing. They're not behind grade level. They are able to keep up with their peers. They just might have a gap or 2 more than those proficient students do. But they are not failing. Linda, I'm sorry you don't agree. I know.
There's a couple of concerns that I have with this. One is that we need to get better. We need to keep improving. But guess what? That's why we come to school every day.
Yeah.
If all our kids had arrived, there'd be no reason for us to keep coming to school. So that's our job. That's our work every day, is to help everybody get a little bit better. So that concern, I feel like we're addressing the very best we can with the best resources that we've got available to us, with the resources the state makes available to us. The other concern I have is what the state terms as passing. We've been talking about that. There's a false narrative in the community that if kids aren't in those top two scoring categories that they've failed. That's simply not the case. Now, the state never says that. They say the top two scoring categories are passing, but that infers, it implies that the other two are failing. And that's the hump that we really need to get over, in my opinion, as far as community perception. As far as the work that we do with our kids, we've got that dialed in pretty well. And I think you're going to be sharing about that a little bit more as we go forward.
I think we all grew up in that traditional A to F system. So I think just showing those first two categories of how those correlate, that can help that conversation. Because we're used to that. We knew going to school, a C was considered average. You were doing okay if you got a C. Was that great? No. Did you have some things to improve upon? Yeah, but you were kind of hanging in there with your peers. You were doing what you needed to do. Even a D is considered passing. I mean, when you think about no pass, no play, those kids have to have a D or higher in order to continue in sports because that's considered passing. You weren't failing, and this is even higher than what we were used to growing up. It was below 50%. So that's even a little higher than what we were used to growing up. So if we can really correlate that a little bit better when we're talking about this and trying to educate people on what is truly passing within a proficiency system, that's probably the best way to help describe that because it really takes in what we know and what we can account for.
And the grade 8 scores are so far below. So both county, district, and state are so far below across the board. What? How can there be such a gap?
Yeah.
You know, when they're ideally being tested over the same things from year to year to year, or maybe they're not.
Yeah, they are.
I can
Same
just, a
tip.
little bit of experience on my part, maybe Cara's too, teaching 8th grade math. 8th grade, they dance to a different drummer.
Well,
And
it's
sometimes
ELA as
they
well.
come, and they come to school, this is a one day test, and some of them care, some of them don't.
So the teachers, you're saying the teachers here or across the state do not test their students and know where they are until
I
that's
say they.
clear at the end of the year?
No, I'm
What do you
saying that
say?
this is a
Clarify
one
that,
test day that they
please.
come in, it's a standardized test that they're taking. And a lot of 8th graders, you're smiling, a lot of 8th graders, it's no big deal to them. They're not invested in how they're gonna do on that test.
Well, that's our job, to get them invested.
It is, absolutely.
I would agree.
That's what the
I
teachers
would
should
agree.
be doing.
So Andy, going back to your question of why is this the case? Why are we seeing this really in a lot of cases, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, not just here, but across the state? And this has been years and years and years of that same trend. I wish I had an answer for you. I tell you, I work with the gals down at the state who work in the math department from ADE. They don't have a solid answer of you could do this and this and this and improve. They're almost at a loss just as much as we are. And everybody I talk to, they don't have the magic answer for this. We've talked to the analytics department within the state assessment component. They don't have an answer. They gave a similar answer actually to what Jane just said. That's not acceptable. We're still working to do everything we can to get those scores up. However, I do think it needs further conversation at the state level. Why is this happening? You can't tell me that a whole system of educators and students are performing that low with what we have. We're all doing and teaching to the same standards. Where's that disconnect? At some point, we have to force the state to look at that assessment. We can't. We don't have access to the assessment. We're not allowed to look at it. So we don't even get to know what they're doing and what's actually being assessed on that assessment.
And I think that's an issue as well. I mean,
Agreed.
districts don't even have access to what the standard, we have access to what the standards we're testing on are, but how the state is testing that, we don't get to see that.
Nope.
We don't know what scores they're looking at
No.
to reach these levels.
No.
So it's kind of like going in blind. And
It is.
just from knowing the students I volunteer with, a lot of them are 9th graders, you know, that first year in high school is is critically hard for them. Adjusting to the difference that they're facing from the 8th grade where they were top dog, you know, moving up to 9th grade where they're bottom of the rung, and just the difference in expectations and what they need to do to pass a class. I'm not talking about proficiency, but to pass a class
Yeah.
is far different than what they may have been used to in junior high. So there's a lot of things, and there's always going to be those kids that just don't care. This isn't a big thing, you know? A lot of the kids I work with are working 30 hours a week and trying to build a restaurant with their parents, and school is not their highest priority.
Right.
Or they're coming up with their own fashion line, or they're trying not to be homeless.
Right.
So, I mean, it just, especially for a 9th grader coming in with those types of concerns in their head, man, something is wrong at that level of testing from the state.
Especially when you see, sorry, Brian, we see a bounce back in high school. By
Right,
high school,
right.
they're performing really well. So you can't tell me that we're really that far off track, but we're able to just within a year get them back on track. I mean, our teachers are amazing, but we're seeing that trend consistently across the state.
Yeah, it's super discouraging to see where our test scores are for
Correct.
both the LA and math at the middle school level currently. But you're exactly right. You point out something really important. We rebound to well above state averages by the time they get tested in 11th grade. So there's something, I don't know that it's our students or our teachers. There's really something about the test that's funky. That was the point of my comment earlier. It's certainly not the case that most kids in Arizona are not very bright. I work with kids in Arizona every day. They are really bright.
Yeah.
There's something funky about the test, and you're right, we need to get the state to take a hard look at it. In the meantime, at least stop characterizing only the top 2 categories as passing.
Yeah, I was just, that's where the comparisons come in for me. That's where you have the constants, you have the test, you have the teachers, you have students, you have the day and time, you have the 8th graders. I taught 8th grade for 7 years. I know exactly how they can be different from one day to the next and care from 1 minute to the next. And I think that's where the comparisons come in. Because correct me if I'm wrong, even the top districts in some, they're only 60, 70%.
If they're lucky.
You can't tell me that 1/3 of every child in Arizona is a failure. Because when you look at just these numbers and you characterize it as that's the teacher's job to get them motivated, and so they must not be doing their job if you just look at these numbers, because that's what you say. And so look at only these numbers, and you must say, we have dumb kids in Prescott, and we have horrible professionals trying to make them not as dumb. That's not the truth. That's where the comparisons, because the things we can't change are the things that people focus on. It's how do we do compared to everyone else that has the same constants. And that's where we perform, I think, pretty well, minus some areas that are just anomalies. That's all I have to say.
I would also like to point out, I was once an 8th grader, not too long ago, who was also, judged on my score. And I don't think any number or test score should, judge a kid, because I know, I went into my freshman year, being doubted, but I went into, all honors classes despite a bad test score, and, now I have over a 4.0 GPA. So I think what the test doesn't represent is the transition that 8th grade does hold.
I agree. I was a C student, a 2.1 grade point in high school. So put me in a category, I think I've done pretty well with my life.
What do we have in place? And I'm sorry, your first name is what?
Carly.
Carly. It's important to know as a student that teachers judge their teaching according to test results. If I give the kids a test, that tells me what I did well with that lesson, what I didn't get across. It drives our next lessons. We reteach with that. And I don't know if it's just, that's not done here. It looks like it's not done across a lot of places, but I look at the national report card too. And the national report card does not show favorably in Arizona. All Arizona schools are very low. We are in the bottom third. So what are we celebrating? You know, what, being the best of the worst? I don't know. But the district that I came from was very similar to the test results here. I have a lot of hope for beyond textbooks that that is something that has brought their test scores up. Maybe it'll work here. I'm going to go back, circle back with about a year and a half ago, I said we should use our own tests. And everyone rather made me feel badly about saying something like that. But let's create, how much longer are we going to take? Let's create our own test that is aligned with the standards, that is aligned with all these new curriculums we've spent thousands of dollars on, and we test our kids so we know where our teachers need help. I've worked for 2 years bringing tutors in. Give those children who are starting to fall behind a tutor so they can catch up and not get so far behind as our scores progressively through the grades go down, down, down. And maybe we'll see a difference. It's easy to create a test from what your lesson plans are. And you just have to learn how to word it so that they are non-biased and that they are comprehensive and they are structured so you can see. And the more tests we give, the less test anxiety the children have. And everybody, it's a win-win situation.
So are you suggesting that we do away with the standardized test?
No, we can't do away with
Because
the
I think what you're saying you would
standardized
see in any classroom here. Teachers do give tests. They do, you're not
But
seeing.
then our kids would do better on the standardized tests
Then that's- see, I'm not sure I agree with you
if everything's
there.
aligned with the standards.
That's the disconnect that
logic.
we're talking about, though.
Exactly.
Because I think there was a lot of assumptions you just made that I would love to clarify for you. Our teachers are assessing frequently, and that was the number one reason that we partnered with Beyond Textbooks. We were in the process of creating all of our own assessments and our materials to help make sure that we were teaching the content the way it needed to be taught. They already had them done. They are proven to be effective. Districts who are using their assessments are highly successful districts. So we said, why reinvent that and create something that's going to take us years to vet and make sure quality when we can partner with Beyond Textbooks for their formative assessments, which are quick 5-question quizzes that teachers are giving for each standard. They have a common formative 1, a common formative 2, a common formative 3. They can test a student 3 to 4 times on the same standard. They're using that test information immediately to create reteach and enrichment groups. It is happening every single day.
Then our end of the year test scores should be higher.
Correct.
And I mean, what did we do? Abandon Galileo 2/3 of the year last year?
No.
That was our benchmark test.
Yes.
And then I was trying to track the progression that way. Then suddenly we dumped it because the new improved bells and whistles is Beyond Textbooks. So are we starting from scratch again, kicking that can down the road? I'm not satisfied with that.
So we did do Galileo 3 times a year for about 10 years. Last year was our last year. And we had decided it is not meeting the needs for our teachers or our
And it
students.
took us 10 years to discover that. That's a kid going from kindergarten to 10th grade. Their life is over in school.
So what we have decided to do, that's why we partnered with Beyond Textbooks, is so that we had more frequent assessments. So I'll give you an example of 7th grade math last quarter. Had 7 essential standards that they were teaching to proficiency. That's what they were focusing on through the quarter. What they did is they gave on each of those 7 standards, they gave at least one formative assessment, which is a 5-question quiz on are they proficient or are they not. If they did not pass that, they did a reteach, and then they gave them an assessment again. If they still did not get it, they continued to reteach and did that again. Then at the end of the quarter, we gave a benchmark, which was comprehensive in all 7 of those. So we're at the point of actually really testing our kids more frequently so that we have in-time accurate data and information. Galileo was only 3 times a year, and really out of that, you had a pre-test at the beginning of the year, which you go, okay, my kids haven't been taught this. What am I going to do with that now? You had a mid-year assessment to go, okay, I've taught about half of these standards. It gives me a gauge of where students are. And then you had an end of year. So you really only had one that helped guide instruction. Could teachers create their own? Absolutely. We had teachers doing that all over the place. Were they always the best representation of what they're going to see on that state assessment? No. That's, again, why we couldn't switch until we had a better option. That better option was Beyond Textbooks, and that's where we're bringing in those assessments.
I have all the hope in the world then.
Have anything else? Math?
Yes. All right, so same, now we're looking at our math performance comparison, so our neighboring districts, county, and then the state of Arizona. And how we're comparing. Remember, this is only taking into consideration those 2 highest achieving categories, the highly proficient and then proficient. And then, again, that chart to kind of break down the comparison between proficiency grading and letter grading, and then our more accurate representation because we're bringing in those partially proficient students. Just to reiterate, those students are not failing. They are showing proficiency in some standards, just not all standards. That's why they're partially proficient. And that is giving them credit for where they are proficient. And once again, we do see a drastic difference.
It still gives me heartburn where we're at, even with the 3 top categories aggregated together in 7th and 8th grade math. So that's why we're putting as many resources as we are into that. We've talked at length about the various things that we're doing to move the needle there. We're hopeful to see progress this year.
And I would just suggest, too, that we're very hopeful that Beyond Textbooks will make a difference, and we won't really know that until we do our testing next May, unfortunately. But I'm hopeful, too, that we'll see, based on what I've heard from teachers, that I'm expecting us to see.
We do have some early data
Yep.
that's
seen that.
encouraging.
Yep.
We just took our first benchmarks, and I don't know if you want to go into depth about it, probably not, but can you give us
Not in depth. We're still working on how we would want to share that because it is our first time also looking at the data, analyzing it, and figuring the best way to present it that would be most effective. But we are consistently seeing proficiency levels 2 times, 3 times the amount of what they were at the end of last year. So we are seeing, we're very, very hopeful. I was pumped when the scores were coming in as they were taking benchmarks.
I gotta tell you, as a parent, the rigor is significant.
Yes.
It's not overwhelmingly stressful. They want to learn, but the rigor is night and day from last year.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of parents are commenting on this. It just shows that, it's at least, I like that Vail has done it. They've been successful with it, and there's something that because it's been developed by teachers by a successful district, at least it's relatable, right? It's not somebody in a can or doing it in some type of vacuum that's forcing this curriculum or these assessments down their throat. It is relatable. So at least that's the experience that we're getting from parents.
And their partnering districts have also seen success.
Good.
So it's not just Vail. We're not just comparing ourselves to them. We do have other districts around the state, around the country, that might be a little bit more aligned with what we see here in Prescott that have also had success.
So no cans being kicked, just hard work every day is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
I
want to back up what Stan said about hearing about the rigor. I'm hearing that from parents as well.
Yeah.
That they're impressed this year with the rigor that's, the higher level of rigor that they're seeing their students facing. But a couple, maybe just one question. Before, I'm going to use Vail just because they created the Beyond textbooks that we're using. Before they were able to do this, where were they sitting assessment-wise? I know we're looking at different assessments. I mean, it's
They're
not the
totally
same.
different.
It's not the same instrument. But were they similar to us?
No. So they showed us their data when they introduced, I don't know if you've ever even seen it.
Yes, I have.
You have? Okay.
Yes.
But so it was early 2000s, they were a very low performing district. And they were like, we have to do something. They were very bottom. And within a couple years of implementing those frequent assessments, they started to see more and more and more gains.
Yeah.
And then they've had to, obviously, when we changed standards, when we changed assessments, they had to completely revamp. When we went totally digital, they revamped and made everything digital. So they've kept up with the changes that have happened through assessment and standards.
So a couple of things that stand out to me. It took them a few years
Yeah.
to get to the point they're at. It's not like it happened because they instituted this brand new, panacea that they put in place.
Right.
The other thing is the digital side of it. I know our kids are coming to school and they're having to learn how to take tests on a computer, so teachers now, in addition to teaching the standards and then assessing them on these standards formatively and then for the big one at the end of the year, they also have to teach them at the younger ages, particularly, how do I do this on a computer screen?
Yes.
So this is taking more time in their classroom
Yes.
for them to teach kids how to do that, correct?
And which is where we practice those skills frequently, but it is a whole nother skill that we have to teach students, and it takes an incredible amount of time. So when we do data review, we don't just look at, did they understand the content? Could they read the question? We have to go, could they navigate the technology in order to answer this? Do they know it and they just couldn't figure out how to drag and drop, how to sort them, how to check 2 or 3 boxes? So there's a lot of different components, and it's incredibly complex.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to comment that the state says that they've kept the academic value at each test across. They say they kept it the same, even though they changed the test. So I just want to reemphasize that we are somewhat concerned about these scores, and that we as a district are still working towards increasing them.
Absolutely.
Instead of just explaining them away.
Yep.
Okay, so we are actively trying, I'd like the public to know, we are actively trying
Yes.
to increase them.
Thanks for saying that, Carl. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. Super important to provide context for what the scores really mean, but even more important to do the work every single day to try to improve. Is this the only measure of a kid's success or school success? Of course not. But is it an important measure of our success? It sure is. It sure is. So this is something we're focused on all the time.
All right, thank you so much. Is there more?
Yeah, we're almost there, I
All
promise.
right.
Almost
No, I'm just
there.
kidding. Okay, there's a flag football game going on, I'm just saying. but I'm
Ooh,
just
okay,
saying
we're
it
working.
goes. They're defeated now.
We're not getting out of
We're
here
not
till
gonna make
9.
it. That's okay.
So again, I want to put Prescott Unified scores into perspective for you, because if you're just looking at those passing scores, you are saying, it's terrible. We have room to work, and we are doing that work. And you ask our teachers right now, they will tell you they're working harder than they ever have, because we're implementing new assessments. We've raised the bar. They have times that they have to collaborate. There's lots happening. But this is where we compare to our peers in the state of Arizona. ELA, we're in the top 17% of districts statewide. That is something to celebrate. With math, even with the scores looking like they do, and we know we have lots of room to grow, we're in the top 19% of districts in the entire state. I am fairly confident with what we've put into place and what we're seeing from students and teachers just in first quarter this year, that's going to change. And it's only going to get better. However, we are a high performing district. And I just want to end it by saying, I'm incredibly passionate about data. I think it is very useful for our kids, for our teachers, for us as district leaders. to look at and go, how can we make changes and implement? It's not just a measure of who somebody is. So I'm not a big fan of reading off of slides. However, I think this is important enough to share with you because I think as adults, we need to do a little bit better with how we talk about data, not only with kids, with teachers, with the community, and Carly, you were speaking my language, but I just want to remind us that while test scores provide useful information about a child's academic progress, they do not define who a child is. Our kids are not failing, they are not failures, they are kids. They are students who are growing and developing and working. They measure one single aspect of learning on one day, one time. They're in school for 179 other days throughout the year. They can't capture the creativity, the kindness, the resilience, the unique talents that each child brings to the classroom and to this world. A child's potential can't be confined to a single test score. They are thinkers, they are problem solvers and dreamers with unlimited potential. Test scores don't reflect their ability to overcome challenges, their love for learning, or the many ways that they can contribute to the world around them. And I will tell you that starts with us, and we have to do better. So, that's it. Now we're good. I'll let you guys read the next two, but
I couldn't agree more with this. Again, it's a very important measure, but it's not the only measure of a kid's success, a teacher's success, or a school's success. And I really love the way that you framed it for us. We've got to do better as adults, not taking this data and beating each other up with it, but using it as a tool to help each other improve.
the tool to learn.
Thank you. All right, item 7A, summary of current events. Item 7A1, Mr. Tenney.
Okay, super fast. Couple of things here. Boy, this seems like a long time ago, and it was, but we have not had a board meeting since, I think, so our 9/11 days. Several of you were able to come to several of the different remembrances that we had at Prescott High School, at Taylor Hicks, at Abaya Judd, and at Mile High Middle School particularly. They had school-wide events that we were all invited to, and so a couple of different photos from there, and that was an impactful day to learn about some of the things that make our country important. There weren't any test scores from this, importantly, but it is one of the things that makes our schools successful. Another piece, so you got a picture of the kids singing the national anthem at Mile High. I think that's Mrs. Johnson right there in front, if I'm not mistaken. Fantastic. I was going to say that's your good side, but all of your sides are good. You look great in all the photos I've ever seen. We've got a cottonwood tree at Mile High that we've talked about several times. We've invested quite a lot of money that we had intended for other purposes into keeping it alive and to keeping kids safe. And that's what it looks like now with its most recent haircut. There's actually, since then, we've added, how high is the fence? Help me out, Andy. 8 feet tall, I think. There's an 8-foot fence around it with some nice mulch around the tree to maybe help it recover from the shock of having a third of its limbs taken off. But we've saved it, and hopefully people are happy about that. Go ahead. Adam's embarrassed by this, but this last Thursday, was it Thursday, Adam? Adam attended a breakfast put on by the Prescott Chamber of Commerce where he was named the Prescott Area Educator of the Year. So let's have a little hand for Adam Meader. Well deserved. We saw in the last few slides he's been able to single-handedly take our in-the-toilet test scores from Mile High Middle School and somehow make our kids successful again within a couple of years. So great job. No, anyhow, seriously, Adam does a terrific job leading Prescott High School. He's made some important culture changes, and kids are successful and happy there. We continue to increase enrollment there year after year. He just does a great job hiring people and leading them. Thanks for everything you do, and congratulations on that. Speaking of Prescott High School, you know, I try to get around to a school just about every day of the week, and this was something that was going on about 35 minutes into quarter number 2 in one of our pre-calculus classes, and I just thought, this is amazing. Adam, help me out with the terminology here. We're doing long division of polynomials, yes? I remembered. Very good. What do you think? And I was like, this is incredibly complex. This is way above what I ever learned in high school or even college, frankly. I mean, I did a different track instead of math. I'm glad there's people who get this that, you know, can build my cell phone and get me from point A to point B on a plane and things like that. But this is pretty impressive. I'm looking around the room, and it's 15 and 16-year-olds that are doing this together. People who talk about, we're not challenging our kids. We got to up the rigor. Are you kidding me? What? It was pretty impressive to see what they were doing. And again, this wasn't, we've given ourselves a long runway of the last 117 days, and we're finally here. This was 35 minutes into quarter number 2 coming back after fall break. And I was just like, I got to take a picture of this and show it to the board tomorrow. It was pretty impressive. Cara's probably like, yeah, whatever.
I've
But
taught that in algebra.
there you go. But for me, this was impressive. This is content I think of myself as reasonably intelligent and well-educated. This is beyond me. And we got 15-year-olds that are in the process of mastering it every day.
Carly and Vanessa are saying that is so 6 years ago.
Yeah. They may be. Anyhow, I think that's what I've got. Okay.
Awesome. All right, board members. Andy.
All right, so since our last meeting, quite a few things. I've met with Maya Caldwell, the Director of Exceptional Student Services, twice. They are working hard to maximize resources across the district for state funding and grants, hopefully bringing some new programs in, working on their behavioral intervention program, coming up with a comprehensive plan to transition students to gen ed. I think the big thing that they're doing with this is they've created and developed an ESS leadership team that is working to bring all the educators from all the different schools together, which hasn't happened in the past, according to them. And so they're looking for new ways to work with kids and families and getting all of their teachers together for professional development days, which I think is a great step, hopefully building that team environment there. I was able to attend the first ever flag football game for Prescott High School.
Don't rub it in.
Which
Or stand
was a
grieving.
great win,
Getting states.
and they're doing fantastic.
Undefeated.
Yeah, undefeated. Also was able to attend the boys' homecoming game. I hope flag football becomes as big of an event as our Friday night home boys
I think it's on
football.
its way.
Because I know, and they are talented people that are playing. It's amazing to watch them play.
A great coach, too.
Yeah. I visited choir and weights and Spanish and econ with Mr. Neely a couple weeks ago. Saw Miss Johnson's choir class. And I want to say I've visited Mr. Otis's class, orchestra class, a couple times as well. You guys are doing such a great job. Seeing that grow back to where it was when my daughter was in school in the band is really gratifying. So great work. And let's see. They held the homecoming dance on a Wednesday, which I guess you've been doing at the high school for quite a while now, having these things on Wednesdays. And students seem to love it.
It's because of participation, we get the most participation on Wednesdays and less parties afterwards.
Okay.
It's the safest environment on a Wednesday.
Nice.
And Carly and Vanessa, roughly how many kids came to that homecoming dance?
We sold a little over 1,000 tickets, I believe, or a little under, somewhere around.
Out of 1,500 students, you had 1,000 of them.
Yeah, we have the most participation in like most of the schools I've ever talked to in Arizona.
That's amazing. So great job, and that's my report.
Awesome. Linda? You think?
No, I've had some health issues, so I haven't.
Cara?
I'm good.
You're good.
All right.
I was out of the country most of the time, so I didn't have a chance to do too much except hike, but I did have a chance to take in the presentation that Clark and Brian did on how schools are financed in Arizona. I think we need to do that more often. Every time I talk to Brian, I know, but every time I talk to you, I learn something new. It's how many times? 3 times you hear it? Is that what we said before? I heard it was 7 at one point, but so I just need to hear it about 5 more times. But it was amazing to listen to how schools are funded in Arizona. It was an eye-opener. Brett was there too, so we both kind of took a lot of notes, and it was well worth it.
And I just want to reiterate a little bit more on the Patriot Day, that every school had an event, even if we didn't go to it. We know that Lincoln and Discovery Garden, they also had events. I know our kids came home and they had hats and they had all kinds of information.
In every
It was
classroom,
just
this was
red,
something
white.
that was
I mean,
going
they
for
know
sure.
9/11. It's unbelievable, right? And our own students played taps at 3 of these locations to include Andy Binder's daughter, who did an amazing job at Taylor Hicks. So, and it's just nice to see the community that it was all out there. And Abaya Judd even reached out to all the firefighters and first responders for that lunch, and all of us were there. And they brought their the dogs in, right? So kind of the pets, and it was just, the kids loved it, and it was just great appreciation for
Mrs. Robertson, how many years have we been doing that at Abaya Judd?
We started
Roughly.
the year after, so we started in 2002. We skipped the year of COVID.
Okay,
So,
so 21
yeah.
years.
It
And-
was
and
just a
you
way
were
to-
one of the people that
yeah, Mrs.
got that
Yetman,
tradition started.
we started that at Abaya Judd. It was pretty, it's lovely to see it continuing.
And you both
'cause
were
it's
there.
Yes, we were. We were both there.
That's awesome. Lincoln also had his fall carnival. A lot of sponsors throughout the community. Great to see. And I'll tell you, the front and back playgrounds were packed with families, and it was a great fall evening, like it always is. But great community in there, that they do every single year, and they run on a limited budget, and everybody loves it. And then this Friday is the NHS induction ceremony. Did I steal your thunder, Carly?
No,
Okay,
absolutely
good.
talk
Okay,
about
gosh.
it.
Okay, good. So it's the only way I can get an AHS is by being the keynote speaker. So finally made it. But I just want to say, there's 4 pillars of NHS, and it's scholarship, service, leadership, and character. And I think it speaks to a lot what you were just speaking about now. And I never knew that, obviously, because I wasn't in there. But it's something that we'll be speaking on it. And honestly, these kids really exemplify it. And it'd be neat to be talking about the leadership and the service aspect and the community aspect. And these kids do it in spades. So
But you knew a lot of people who were in NHS.
I sure. Yes. I think Brett was in it, but I was not. No, anyway. All right, we are going to turn over to Vanessa. Why don't we start with you?
All right. So of course we had homecoming week, we had the bonfire, the parade, and of course the dance. Every student that I talked to, any teachers, most of them all had really positive feedback. So a huge thanks to student council for giving us all of these opportunities. I know last meeting we talked about the importance of our students and how we can keep them safe and how we can educate them on consequences of their own actions and how we can actually prevent any tragedies. So on this Thursday, actually on the 8th, these 8th grade students, they're going to have a teen maze. So this is with the North Star Youth Partnership. It's just going to allow them to interact with teachers and educators about the physical and emotional consequences of sexual activity or substance use and abuse. And then also on the 28th of September, Farm to School had their ribbon cutting ceremony for their Forest Learning Lab, which I think is amazing. That we can take these initiatives to help bring healthier environments to our schools. And then last but not least, Abaya Judd, on the 23rd of this month, they're having a fundraiser at Peter Piper Pizza, which I think is also fun for them. So yeah.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Vanessa. All right, Carly?
Yeah, I'll build off of what Vanessa said a little bit. I did go to the ribbon cutting of the food forest, and it was really it's just so nice to see somewhere that I knew growing up, as a freshman was so such a waste of space at the time, and those initiatives did really help. On the topic of homecoming, I'd like to shout out my senior student council who won best hallway. It was USAD.
They better.
Yeah, I'm the National Honor Society president, and so you're welcome for that little slide in, your recommendation.
Thank you. Gotta know something.
Yeah, it's this Friday from 5:30 to 6:30 at our Ruth Street Theater. If anyone would like to come, I would like to back up what Mr. Gologoski said. I am so proud of, we have almost 40 members now, and for those of you who don't know, to get in, it's a pretty rigorous application process. You have to be above a 3.8 GPA, and next semester, we require 30 hours of service, and for new members this semester, it's 15. you know, those are the future leaders, I hope. So yeah, it's just really great for me to watch those people grow up and see all the good they're doing at this high school. The last week of October is Special Olympics Week. Student Council is hosting this at Prescott High School. It is a week to honor the adaptive programs that our school is hosting. And there's a few ways we're involving the community. We're doing farmers market both the Saturday before and the Saturday after this week. So if anyone wants to stop by, that's the 26th and November 2nd. We are just, talking to our community about what these programs do, where their money goes to if they decide to donate. And last year we did take some donations. And then something new we're doing this year is a silent disco dance for all the students through all the PUSD schools in the BEST programs and the partners of this, which silent discos are like a new technology, but we are hiring a DJ and everyone gets like a set of headphones. And for those students who get overwhelmed and things like that, they can just take them off and it's free of charge. And so that's one way we're incorporating all of the PUSD students, as well as we've reached out to all the principals at the school. And I believe we've heard back from one or two to do coin jars in those classrooms as well. So all of that money does go to the Special Olympics team at Prescott High School.
Do the chaperones get earphones too?
If you'd like, you
We don't. In disco. Sorry, you got some.
I just want to say something really quick. When I was principal at Bayajed 10 years ago, Vanessa and Carly were two of my little folks there, and I just love seeing where they're at today. I anticipate, I expect, I assume they have really good test scores, but whether they do or not, you guys, is it not clear that these two are totally on their way to success in life? So if that measure shows that they're there, terrific. If it doesn't, well, okay. This is what it's about, is what we produce from our schools. And I can't think of two better examples. I get goosebumps listening to you talk and share the things that you do and contribute to the school. Thank you. You're awesome.
All right. Item 7B, community comments shared with the governing board. Does anybody have anything?
I have one.
Yeah.
So I've met with a representative from the PHS Half Century Club a couple weeks ago. Not sure if it was Jane Orr, who is the wife of Jack Orr. I'm not sure if she was a teacher in the district, but anyway, Mr. Orr was a teacher, longtime teacher in our district. They're involved with the PHS Half Century Club, and I just want to share that since 2016, they've given out over $207,000 in scholarships to our students. Awesome. They gave out $12,000 last year, $6,000 to 20 different students. Not 6,000, 2,000 to 10 different students, or 6 different students, sorry.
It's hard to keep track. There's so much
Yeah,
going
right?
on.
The math thing.
Need some help?
Yeah, I do. And but the big point I wanted to make about this is that CTE students are now eligible for these half-century scholarships. So a student doesn't necessarily have to be going on to college or university track, bachelor's degree track. They can go on to a career trade type of a program and still get a scholarship from the Half Century Club, which I think is, they're eligible to apply at this point. They didn't give any last year, but they're hoping that this year more students will take advantage of that. So
Great. Excellent. Thanks, Andy. Anything else? All right, moving on to item 8, action items. Item 8A, consent agenda. Does anybody have anything that like to have polled or highlighted? I'd like to highlight item 8A2, and that's donations. We have 3 donations, one from the Kiwanis Club, and this is their community foundation, check in the amount of $2,950 for Taylor Hicks Technology. Yavapai County Farm Bureau, check in the amount of $500 for Farm to School, and Carolyn Rasmussen donated $100 for the Teacher's Closet.
Super cool.
Moving on to item 8B, study and voting session. Do we have any?
We got to have a vote on the consent.
Oh, let's do that. All right.
That's
Moving on. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda approval?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
second.
Motion is seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda passes. Thank you. Item 8B, studying voting session. Do we have any call to public? Okay. Moving on, we've got item 8B1, consider approving an out-of-state travel request from Mr. Travis Stedman. Is that how you say it?
Actually,
I'm just kidding. I'm just
we've
kidding.
changed the order a little bit. We're
Oh,
going to go
you
with
did?
Dr. Otis and Mrs. Johnson.
First.
Did that, Gene?
Yeah, we shifted around since we got our draft from a couple of days ago.
Yeah, okay.
Here it is.
The
You've been
folks
waiting
have-
so patiently, sorry.
That's right. They've been waiting patiently, so if it's
All
all
right.
right, we'll do that.
Okay, so item 8B1, consider approving an out-of-state request or travel request from Dr. Calvin Otis, Director of Instrumental Music, and Miss Erin Johnson, music teacher at Prescott High School, to take the Pride of Prescott marching band students and choir program students to Disneyland. Floor is yours.
March up here.
Oh.
All right, good evening. Again, my name is Calvin Otis, and my colleague here, Erin Johnson. We'd like to talk to you guys about a trip that we're hoping to plan for Disneyland. While there is some fun involved, there is also quite a bit of educational, educational stuff on the docket as well, because we want to make sure that the kids have a good learning experience as well. All right, so every student that attends the Disney trip will also be participating in education-based events. We will begin our education journey with clinics. We will have studio classes. We will have workshops. And we will also be having the opportunity to attend some performances at Disneyland. This trip will promote camaraderie, build friendships, and strengthen our connections across the ensembles and performing arts, which both myself and Ms. Johnson feel is really needed at this time. So actually, who we will be taking is everyone from choir is eligible, from the marching band, from orchestra, from concert band, and jazz band as well. And since this is an extracurricular activity, which we will be taking the students out of the school for 2 days, there will be grade checks as well. Right now, this is pretty much set in stone. We just don't have all the details yet. Northern Arizona University has graciously, they are willing to provide us with the opportunity to come up to NAU, check out the campus. They will be hosting us with clinics and workshops. The clinics will be both on an individual level where they will be working with each of our ensembles. And then after that, we will be breaking off and we will be attending either the instrumental studio classes, which means like trombone players will go learn more about trombone with other trombone people. And also on the vocal side, they will be able to branch off into what's known as the vocal area recital, where they get to watch college young professionals perform in a soloistic nature, and hopefully that will not only be a good learning moment but also inspiring as well. If NAU falls through, because I always like to have a plan B, we also have some backup options that includes finding another location for clinics and workshops. I have a few contacts both in the Phoenix area as well as over closer to Anaheim. Or if push comes to shove, we will be bringing clinicians up to Prescott High School and working with our kids before we set off. On Friday, April 25th, our wonderful choir will be participating in the recording session workshop at Disneyland, working with a session specialist. And then on Saturday 26th, the marching band has been invited to perform on Main Street as part of the parade.
So good.
Now, this is just a tentative timeline. Of course, this takes time to get together, but at the moment what we're looking at is leaving on April 24th, going up north to NAU first for our clinics. We will then drive to Anaheim. The next day, we will be having the recording session with the non-performers. We'll be located in California with all our chaperones and myself. And then on Saturday, the marching band will be performing in the parade and the non-performers will be in Disneyland. That way we can all watch the marching band perform. And then we will be leaving California early Sunday morning. So here comes the cost. What we've broken it down to is that the 2-day park hopper is going to cost us about $350 per student. The Rooms will cost about $100 per student. That is with 4 students to a room. Transportation, which is being provided by Master Touch, will be $200 per student. The meals that we will be providing as part of the hotel package is breakfast, and students will need to bring money for lunch and dinners. We are going to have the deposit is going to be due on November 1st, and then full payment will be necessary by February 7th. Wait, sorry, give me one moment, I messed up my notes. Okay, so how we're going to help bring down some of the costs is we will be having group fundraising events that will be organized by both instrumental and choir students / parents. All the proceeds from these specially designated fundraising events will go directly into the general pot to help pay for the Disney trip. Our next fundraisers are going to be a movie night in Ruth Street Theater on November 22nd and a bowl-a-thon at Antelope Lanes on December 16th. School Funder is actually our biggest push for raising money right now. School Funder is a fundraising platform that takes advantage of emails and social media, and the final date to donate is actually on October 17th. As of this morning, we have raised approximately $9,500 with School Funder, and the athletic departments has agreed to provide us with a donation of $5,000, and this does not include the fundraising efforts that the Prescott High School Band Boosters have done. Individuals can also pay using their tax contributions, their tax credit contributions. At the moment, that's where we're at. If you have any questions or if you'd like to help with our fundraising endeavors, please reach out to us. So if you have any questions, we can definitely, hopefully, answer them at this point.
How many students are we talking about approximately in total?
Approximately, we're looking at 100.
Okay, good. And the second question I had, does the performances at Disneyland, is the orchestra involved in either one of those?
Unfortunately, no.
No.
Originally, when I looked into it, I was hoping to get orchestra in as one of the performances, but Disney came back with me saying that, unbeknownst to me, that is the busiest weekend for those recording sessions. And they said while we could figure a way to get choir in, orchestra they were not as hopeful for. Okay. So that's why we are kind of switching gears, if you're familiar, and that's why we're getting clinics and other educational events.
At NEU. Thank you.
So, just really quick, remarkable. 2 years ago, I think the total number of kids that we had in PHS choirs and bands combined was about 45. And so the fact that you've more than doubled that in the last 2 years is a real testament to both of your work and the way that you've recruited kids to the program. It's a nice bounce back out of COVID to begin with, right? COVID hit all performing arts in our district, every district, I'm sure, in America hard. And then we had some turnover in staff and whatnot, but we got 2 great people leading these programs now, and it's made a big difference. And opportunities like this are something that attracts kids to your programs as well. So in addition to the educational element, for these kids now, there's something that will benefit future kids by having things like this. So it's a lot of extra work. This is not going to be a fun weekend at Disneyland for you. You probably know that already. But, man, I'm grateful that you're willing to do it.
About how many chaperones are you going to have ratio for student to chaperone?
Ratio will be more than the 10 to 1. We've got lots and lots of parent support as of right now.
Okay.
Those numbers will come in on November 1st when we get those final deposits in. But as of right now, we're probably at what, 1 parent per 7?
8, I think, is what we had,
7 or 8
Okay,
students.
thank you.
So.
I saw, I scanned the QR code to see what it looked like. So is $12,000 your total cost, or is that just a goal that you set for the school funder?
No, School Funder is kind of interesting. So it's not really controlled by me since since I'm using somebody who works for School Funder. What happens is he actually ends up setting our goals, and the idea is that he started with 5,000, and each time we get a little bit closer to our goal, we bump it up a little bit. Okay. And so he said that according to studies, that shows that's about the best way to get those fundraising efforts. Otherwise, if we put originally I think I told him 100,000 because that's what we were looking at if every student in our program went, and at our original cost analysis, it was going to be about $100,000. He said if we just put $100,000 down, nobody will donate because they feel like they're not actually contributing anything to such a large sum. So while it does say that our goal is 12,000, if we are fortunate enough to hit 11,000 tonight, he will bump it up probably to 14 or 15 tomorrow.
Okay. And this will be open until you leave in February, right?
This
So-
will be open till the 17th.
Till,
Till when?
Till October 17th.
okay.
So we only have 2 more days with that, and then we're switching over to do some more fundraising with the bowl-a-thon, which more details will be coming
Okay.
soon, and the movie night.
So I guess after, maybe this is a question for the finance people, but after January 1st or December 31st, can we use next year's tax credit to go toward this program?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, someone could actually give for a student in November
Yeah.
for 24, and then in January, February, they could give for another
Yeah,
student in
for another
25.
student. Okay.
And the funder, school districts, we have to be careful about fundraising. Schools can't fundraise. We can ask donations, which is what this is. Actually, athletics has used it very successfully, specifically, I think, boys golf. We just put out there and say, we would like money, and people can donate. And like the bowl-a-thon, those are fundraisers through boosters and/or student activity clubs. Schools can't fundraise.
Anything
As
else?
someone who grew up within 5 miles of Disneyland, this is a chance of a lifetime these kids are going to love. And I'm glad you're doing it for them. God bless you.
Thank you all, appreciate it. So I'll consider a motion to approve an out-of-state travel request from Dr. Calvin Audis, Director of Instrumental Music, and Miss Erin Johnson, music teacher at Prescott High School, to take the Pride of Prescott Marching Band students and choir program students to Disneyland. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
A motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're going to Disneyland.
Yes.
All right. Now we'll get back on track.
Yeah.
Okay. Item 8B2, consider approving an out-of-state travel request from Mr. Travis Stedman, head varsity basketball coach at PHS, to participate in the Classic at Damien National Premier High School basketball tournament in Laverne, California. Mr. Neely.
All right, yeah, you guys are stuck with me for 3 in a row here, but first of which, another exciting thing. So our basketball team's looking to go out of state this year. They are prepared to have quite a season, I have a feeling, and so this is part of that process. And so, yes, I think that kind of covers it. 10 to 12 student athletes, 3 coaches, and they'll actually be doing 2 rental vans, so they won't be using any district property to travel. So,
And
any
Coach,
questions?
yeah, Coach Stedman's letter, this is not common for a Prescott team to be going to a California tournament, is it? Could you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I have some experience there. So yeah, no, this is a big deal. This is a really cool opportunity, and basketball program has shown some great strides, like a lot of our programs right now, and so this is a big one.
Yeah, I think so. Good. All right, I'll take a motion to approve an out-of-state travel request from Mr. Travis Stedman, head basketball varsity boys basketball coach at PHS, to participate in the Classic at Damien National Premier High School basketball tournament in Laverne, California. Can I get a motion?
I'll make, okay, I'll make second.
All right, motion is seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Move on, Adam. Item 8B3, consider approving an out-of-state travel request from Mr. Chris Predmore, CTE Automotive Technologies teacher, to take up to 7 students to the 2024 SEMA Convention in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yeah, so, I mean, talk about other neat opportunities. Talking about this one, actually, Mr. Predmore has taken groups, I believe, for the last 4 or 5 years to this exact same event, though I think this might be the largest amount going. They're looking at having 7 kids attend this event. It's all covered through CTE funding, which is special, so these kids are going to be able to get in and see a auto show that from what I understand is pretty special. So traveling to Las Vegas.
Okay. Using our AB bus, or is that?
Yes, so this
We're
one
doing
actually
well?
is using a AB bus, which should be more than enough to go through and handle Mr. Predmore, another chaperone joining him, and 7 students.
Okay. Any comments, questions for Adam? Great. All right, so I'll take a motion to consider an out-of-state travel request for Mr. Chris Predmore, CTE Automotive Technologies teacher, to take up to 7 students to the 2024 SEMA Convention in Las Vegas, Nevada.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
I will second that.
Motion seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes. Item 8B4, consider approving an out-of-state travel request from Miss Catherine Hammer, teacher at Prescott High School, to take PHS students to Spain, Barcelona, and Madrid over spring break 2026.
Yeah, so this is another one of those amazing EF tours that have become so popular with our travel group. Really wonderful opportunity. They're looking at going spring break 2026, so of course way ahead of the game to ask for this one. Just to give you the breakdown, it could be anywhere between 15 to 70 students. They have at least a 6-to-1 ratio on chaperones. Usually there's a lot of family members who like to go on these trips with their kids. And like you mentioned, they're going to be going to Barcelona and Madrid. I'm trying to think if there's anything else super relevant. I mean, the packet you have there gives a lot of great information about this, and this is just another one of these special tours that we've seen a ton of, and I think has become something that families and kids are really looking forward to.
These overseas tours that they do through EF are really geared around an educational component. There's things that kids can do beforehand and afterwards as well that are optional that they can opt into or not. But while they're there, it's not just, hey, let's go see the touristy things, although that's a big part of it, but the history behind it and the connections that they get to make to the culture of wherever they're heading to, Southern Europe in this case, et cetera. So they're pretty neat opportunities.
Yeah, every time we have a group come back, they just rave about the experience, what they learned, what they got to see. I mean, it's pretty rare that kids that age are able to experience the world like that, and in a safe manner like EF provides is pretty special.
I just had one quick question. The itemized expenses are in our board packet, but how do we fund it? Is it just individual kids?
Yeah,
They
so,
do their
they're
own
in the process of recruiting
right
kids.
now.
This is so far out that we
Yep.
want to get it approved, then she'll have a meeting where anybody who might be interested, they come in and find out, what does fundraising look like? What does a payment plan look like? What does it cost to be a chaperone? All those things are talked through, and then they make commitments to either participate or not. And like we said, we've had just nice groups be able to travel.
What grades would be eligible then? Would that just be 9th through 11th at this point?
It's
or
9th through 12th.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
9th through 12 so I'm just thinking a year from now.
That year's 12th graders.
Yeah, so
Right.
I apologize. So I guess theoretically it would be our current 9th through 11th graders. I don't know if she's ever had anybody who's currently in 8th grade, but would be in 9th grade. I think it's possible because they would be a high school student at that point.
Yeah, good to know.
That's a good question. That's one that I don't 100% know.
Yeah.
Do you know what our numbers have been like the last, I know we've approved one of these every year, I think.
Yeah.
I've been on the board.
Galapagos was.
Yeah, we've had a few different ones. It seems like we are always reaching close to that higher end number. So they're in the, 40, 50 kids, then chaperones. So I mean, it's been a very popular thing to be able to do.
Okay.
That's good to hear. All right.
Vanessa, Carly, you guys know anybody who's been on any of these trips?
Yeah, I know a few, and I would just say that everyone has a really good experience. There's never been any problems with like administration and students or anything like that. And I had a few teachers who went as well, and everyone just speaks really highly on the program.
All right. I'll consider a motion to approve an out-of-state travel request from Miss Catherine Hamer, teacher at Prescott High School, to take PHS students to Spain, Barcelona, and Madrid over spring break 2026. Can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Can I ask
Thanks,
a quick question? Mrs. Hammer was wondering if the board would be interested in a presentation that would address some of the questions you've asked. Where have they gone? how many kids go, how do they do fundraising?
Yeah,
How do they,
be great.
make it as accessible to as many people as possible? What kinds of things do they learn, et cetera? So at our November meeting, maybe, would you be interested in hearing from her for 10, 15 minutes about that? Okay, great.
She was real excited to share that, so that would be wonderful. And thank you, guys. I'm off to flag football. Don't be jealous. I am a little bit.
Take me with you.
I hope you score a touchdown.
Go Badgers. I don't think I'm going to score touchdowns. Go Badgers.
All right. Item 8B5, consider approving the 2023-24 AFR. Mr. Moore.
We started fiscal year '24's budget in February, January of '23. So we're almost 2 years into the planning process in which a budget package goes in front of the governing board philosophically in March to the June and July adopted budget, proposed and adopted budget. In December, we had a revision. In May, we had the mandatory revision, and now it's all the financials. We did pass out a copy because I was so proud of myself. On Thursday, I got done a day early, and then all of a sudden, we got an email from the governor's office for one of their grants, and they reviewed some documents and said, your documents doesn't support your spending, you need to change it. And I had to change some of the things on here. So I'll tell you what was changed in a second. But other than that, just the annual financial report literally spells out every single dollar that was brought in all of the different 45-ish funds we have, and then every expenditure that is put out by the district in the fiscal year as well. This just tells you where every penny was spent. It also sets what our carry forward is. I can speak to that if any governing board wants to know what our carry forward now looks like going into this fiscal year, because the carry forward on the proposed budget for fiscal year 25 was an estimate. We still were paying bills. We were still receiving revenue. And so up until August 30th, and now the annual financial report being done, we can no longer change anything. The changes that did happen, if you look in the lower right-hand corner, you're not going to really be able to see a lot because it's so small. It's really small. I have contacts at the Auditor General's office. If you would like changes in their forms, I cannot do anything about them. But on, I think it's the 6th page, but it says page 5 of 10. You're going to see a couple highlighted cells, and I can just tell you what the change is because I know that you looked at this document so much in the last 4 days that you would notice that this was changed if I didn't point it out. On page 5 of 10, you're just going to see some highlights. First, there was one fund, the top one that says $53,027. In your posted AFR, that was $5 more. But because our report didn't substantiate the $5, I got to do work again. And then also in the lower number, which is $2,452,025, and then also in the lower 1.7 million, that number is $14,177 less than what was on your post because they said we needed to redo some things. And if you flip to page 6, which is the next page, you'll see one more fund that is expenditures. It's $132,000. Those less amounts on the previous page, the $5, the $14,000, they needed to go and get charged to what we call indirect costs. It is basically, it's not a federal grant. The ones that we had to reduce were federal grants. With that being said, I had to charge it to something else, and we use indirect. Those are the changes based on what was posted by Sarah on Friday, and I'm just here to answer any questions about carry forward or anything that you previewed in the late nights between Friday and now.
How much is our carry forward?
Interesting that you asked that.
Yeah.
It's going to be about 4.1 million. Now, what I will say is that includes about $1 million that Mr. Tenney and I looked at our more discretionary accounts like Medicaid, forest fees, civic. We felt those balances were getting a little higher, and we need to control those a little. So I moved some M&O expenditures into those funds to lower those balances, which relieved M&O of some expenses. So about $1 million worth of that carry forward, the 4.1, is actually shifting expenses to those discretionary funds. So truly, if we were doing apples to apples, our carry forward would be about 3.1 million. And it was 4 million last year, so it went down 900,000. And
Those
that's,
discretionary funds that normally carry, that you're using these dollars?
yeah, and they're, Civic, we get that from renting our buildings.
Right.
And so if we need a larger item, well, the billboards, for example, advertising, we paid for out of the Civic fund. And so Medicaid, we get about 100, well, Medicaid, we actually increased the amount. We usually got about 250,000, but we were only spending 200,000. So it just grew, and our carry forward in those accounts were just becoming a little too high. And we felt it was better in our M&O or DAA funds rather than those discretionary funds.
And when Brian says discretionary funds, just to clarify, you know, we have multiple different funding sources and multiple different funds. Nearly all of them have strings attached that say you may only spend this money for certain things.
Correct.
There's a very small handful of smaller funds that we get money from. When we rent out a school, money comes in. We can spend that on literally anything that we want to. We can use that to pay for a tiny fraction of teacher salary increases, or we can buy curriculum with it, or we can, you know, whatever it is that we have a need for, we can do that. So those are discretionary funds. There's very few funds that are discretionary in that the money can be used flexibly, like you would for your own family's budget or the budget of a typical business.
Yeah.
We're very restricted on the way that most of our funding, or most of our very limited funding can be used. There's a handful of things that's not the case, and Brian was really, do I want to say creative in public? I'll say it. Brian was really creative about making more money available to M&O by drawing down some of these funds that were building up balances.
Yeah, they're more unrestricted. Like federal grants usually have targeted areas you need to spend: professional development, interventions for kids like Title I, special ed. M&O, you can only spend, then the other funds, you can either only spend it on supplies, people, or non-tangible. The stuff, that's DAA capital. Usually the funds, you have to either spend one or the other. And these funds, you can spend it on, like you said, the soft, non-capital stuff or the capital in any area. And so we drew them down. So it's inflated from, and that was the point of me commenting on that.
Good fiscal responsibility, for sure.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Any other comments on the AFR? Okay. I'll take a motion to approve the 2023-24 annual financial report.
I'll second it.
Motion is seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes. Item 8B6, consider approving the 2023 food service annual financial report. Mr. Moore.
We have a fund, it's called 510, and it dictates its own annual financial report. So this in itself shows the revenue that is brought in by our reimbursed meals when the kids buy. Even our full-priced students, we do get a fraction from the federal government for those meals, and this also shows the expenditures. Yeah. The only correction on there is, and I didn't print out new ones, but it did say that an adult paid breakfast on your copy that was posted cost $2,025 per paid breakfast. The zero was supposed to be a decimal, and so it is corrected on the official form that will get uploaded after this meeting. It is $2.25.
That's much better value, actually.
Great. All right, any questions for Brian? All right. I'll take a motion to consider approving, or for approval of the 2023-24 food service annual financial report.
I will make that motion.
Second.
Motion is seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes. Moving on to item 8B7, consider approving the 2023-24 school level annual financial report.
You know, this is an interesting one. It came about 3 years ago when the federal government basically said, hey, we need to see a report that can be a little bit more nationalized, and so every state was given parameters on what they had to report. This is Arizona's, and essentially what it does is it breaks down all the revenue to the schools, and it's broken up by the annual daily membership. It also takes all of the expenses and breaks it down to the schools. Most of our expenses, the account code does have the school's number, like Lincoln is 112, that's in the account code. We know it's being spent at Lincoln. If it is spent at the district level, that expense would then be divvied up to the schools based on their ADM. So literally every dollar in the district that's spent and every bit of revenue is broken down to the school level. And it just basically is looking to make sure that a school is not being favored in spending, which all our reports show is that our smaller schools actually are not as efficient. And so there's a little bit of a skew of the expenditures to our small schools because they have a principal, just like the high school does, but it's one principal. So really, that's about what these reports do. It also breaks out the special education revenue that we get for the state grant, the IDEA, and what students with a disability, an IEP, brings in. And it also shows we are way underfunded in the area of special ed. We spend about 1.9 million of our M&O out of in the special ed area, in areas that students are legally
Entitled.
yeah. Anyway, and so this breaks that down and basically does show that special ed is underfunded.
Any questions for Brian? All right.
Ryan, are these standardized forms across the state?
Yes, every district. In fact, you could go and download, excuse me, I'm sorry, they are not charter schools do not have to.
Right, but for public school
All,
districts,
yeah.
use these same,
All districts must use these forms.
Okay.
Charter schools or public schools do,
Okay.
but they don't have to do these annual financial reports to this level.
yeah.
I have looked at the AFR for a charter district, it's about 4 pages.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
So yeah,
I'll take a motion to approve the 2023-24 school level annual financial report.
So moved.
A motion of a second?
I'll second it. We'll both
Motion.
second it.
Big one, so excited. All right. We have motion as second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
If one of our principals won the lottery and moved to Bahamas all of a sudden and I had to be the principal, I could do that. I get their job. I probably wouldn't do it as well as they did, but if Sarah or Kelsey or Andy won the lottery and moved to the Bahamas and left all of a sudden and I had to do their job, I get their job. I could do their job. I wouldn't do it as well, for sure, but I could do it. If Brian wins the lottery and moves to the Bahamas, we are in trouble, folks. I get his job, but I could not do his
and
job.
I was a 2.1 GPA in high school, baby.
Because his test scores weren't that great, but he's turned out okay.
But I can do this job pretty well.
You probably like girls too much then.
That's probably it.
Linda.
That was probably it.
You got my number.
That's very insightful.
Moving on to item 8B8. Consider adopting the proposed changes to ASBA Policy Advisory 788 to 791. Mr. Binder.
Yeah, so these, just a reminder, these policy advisories, all of them really take updated laws, whether at the federal level or the state level, and update policies so our policies and regulations reflect those changes. And this is particularly related to the Title IX anti-discrimination changes that happened at the federal level. There's some policies, most of the changes in this packet are reflected in the regulations, and really just how to kind of carry out the process. About 5 years ago, there was a process put into place that said if there's a sexual harassment or sexual discrimination case, or at least an allegation of one, schools and universities have to kind of follow a certain process. The process is quite extensive. It kind of goes through timelines, that there's an investigation process. There are certain requirements as far as timelines and roles, and the regulations have changed about, actually were updated last April, and then a final ruling came out in August, and so these policies reflect that. So I was able to talk with several of you, and I think I answered some questions, but that's it in a nutshell. The big changes really to the policies, like I said, really are just about how the district would carry out an investigation. There's some changes in the actual definition of what sexual harassment entails. There's some changes in terms of what is required in terms of if there was a case, for example, if there was a case when a complainant or somebody who's has a concern brings it to the school, but says, I don't want to file a complaint. In the past, we really didn't have an option with some of these changes. We would certainly consider the complainant's choice to not file a complaint, but if we felt, what this is a situation that really we're concerned about safety of our staff or of our students, we're going to investigate this. That's an option. So that's one of the changes that you'll see throughout that. You'll see numerous times throughout they use the phrase sexual discrimination rather than sexual harassment. Title IX from the start in the early 70s has always been a anti-discrimination law. It's just kind of expanded this definition now. So questions around this right now?
And one quickie.
Yeah.
Do we have an appointed Title IX coordinator, or does that change?
We do. I am the
You're it.
district
Okay.
Title IX coordinator, correct.
That
We
answered that
actually,
question
yeah,
quickly.
we actually, I went with 3 other district employees 2 weeks ago and spent 3 days training about all this. So all 4 of us are now trained as coordinators, investigators, and decision makers. So if there ever was a situation where there was maybe a conflict of interest, we have, like I said, 3 others that are all trained in that, but I am the current one.
Thank you.
Comments?
Just one, I know there's a paragraph in here that talks to the timeline. It's on page 18 of 20.
Okay.
Must be made within 30 calendar days of the time the student knew or should have known that there were grounds for the complaint or grievance. So if a student comes to you 40 days later, does that nullify anything that they bring forward at that point?
So it doesn't nullify it. We can continue the continue an investigation. It wouldn't. We wouldn't be. I'll say forced to by policy. Like if there was a concern, though, we would still continue to be able to look and investigate that.
Okay.
Other comments? I will. I'll consider a motion to adopt the proposed changes in ASBA Policy Advisory 788 to 791 as presented. Take a motion.
So moved.
Motion and second.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 8B9, consider approving the School Facilities Oversight Board terms and conditions for acceptance of monies from the Building Renewal Grant Fund for PUSD school sites. And Mr. Moore.
We're not given money to do this, blah, 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 school facilities board, blah, 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 HVACs. That's pretty much what this is.
more.
It's the same one.
pretty
All
much
right.
HVACs.
Clerk, can you please, translate for me? No, this is just another 3 HVACs that we're asking. They're bigger ones, 2 15-ers. So ones at Lincoln. Actually, Lincoln, this is the first one that they've had go that we're getting the school facilities board. But anyway, we're just trying to. We're not putting. We're preventative maintenance schedule, but when it comes to big repairs, we're just putting in for the school facilities board to replace.
How many more did we have to go?
200, well,
You don't want to know.
100, like 195. So,
Yeah, it just underscores how incredibly inefficient the system is. It would be so much better if the state made a certain amount of money available to each district for preventive maintenance, and we were required to use that for, when something's outlived its useful life, instead of waiting till something totally breaks down and then go through the process of saying it's totally broken down. Here's how we prove it, and they say, yep, we get it. There's not any money this year, but you can do it next year. We get to next year, and they finally approve, say, yep, you have enough money. Here's the money, but your board has to approve the way you're using it, et cetera. It's a really slow process.
Yeah, it's a process that it's a game we got to play. So, know the rules and do it. So this is this round.
Is our coal well stocked for Lincoln's boiler furnace?
Yes,
Okay.
actually, Lincoln's boiler and the boiler here, we had some major repairs done in the last year or so.
Are they still functioning?
Yes, well, they're actually functioning optimally
Yeah.
after the expensive repairs that School Facilities Board wouldn't pay for.
That's amazing. Yeah,
So.
thanks. All right. I will take a motion to approve the Schools Facilities Oversight Board terms and conditions for acceptance of monies from the Building Renewal Grant Fund for PUSD school sites.
So moved.
I have a motion, I have a second. Motion is seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 8B10, consider adopting the proposed changes to the classified initial wage placement for an hourly rate increase for all current PUSD bus drivers. Andy?
Yeah, so part of my job, of course, is to make sure that we have qualified staff in all the positions, and one position that's been difficult to fill, both here in PUSD and across the country, is bus drivers. On the document I shared with you, you can kind of see the different things we've been trying to do, from, visiting, recruitment fairs and hiring bonuses and things like that, but it still continues to be a challenge. We, from a pay rate standpoint, we've been pretty competitive, but still sometimes have a hard time both recruiting and retaining qualified bus drivers, and including relief drivers or substitute drivers. And unfortunately, that's led to us having to cancel some bus routes. First quarter, we had to cancel a couple different routes for a couple weeks in a row, and that had significant impact that we really are trying to avoid at all costs. So looking at our pay rate, both for current bus drivers and for any new bus drivers, we're proposing a $1 increase for existing bus drivers, and to increase new bus drivers up one level on the classified placement scale, which it depends on if there's experience and things, but somewhere around 60, 70 cents for new hires. So that's the proposal. Looking at where our current drivers are at, we looked at this and haven't figured it out from an exact prorated amount, but for the year it would be just under $30,000, which we realize is a huge amount, but we also realize this is a huge need. And so so that's where we would be at for this year and then going forward as well. Certainly something we don't like to do mid-year is make changes like this, but felt like this was necessary.
It does follow our proactive budgeting process, in which we've done this, like with the kindergarten class, where we see a need, we use one-time monies, which is usually our discretionary accounts. And then we budget for it in the upcoming year in the the budget package that we put in front of the board in March. This would be on that list because it's a mid-year change that wasn't budgeted for the previous year.
Have you done comparisons with other districts and drivers and where we're at there?
It's in the board packet.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah, so looking at our rates right now, I don't have the exact rates that each individual driver at the different districts have, but they're looking at their pay scales. Like I said, we're pretty competitive currently. If with the proposed, the average for our drivers would be $19.71 an hour, and our estimate is for the other districts are $17.85 and $18.37, so somewhere in that range. So certainly would be higher than.
I just want everybody to kind of hear that. Just, we want to make sure that we are, just like our substitutes and everything, that we're competitive.
Right.
Do we see that they're jumping to other districts, or what do we know?
They're not going to other districts.
Kim, why don't
They're
you
just-
come up to the mic?
Yeah,
So
sorry, I
this is our
forgot to introduce-
transportation director, Kim
Sorry,
Barker,
I forgot to
who's
They're
over
not
our bus drivers.
necessarily going to other districts, they're just not coming. They're taking other jobs elsewhere. Truck drivers make a whole lot more than a school bus driver. So that's where they're going. They're not coming here to drive students.
Because they require CDL, that's the
Correct.
big piece. of it.
Correct.
But they were in on the 4% across the board raise, isn't that correct? Just in July,
We didn't offer a 4% across the board
Pardon?
rate. We didn't have a 4% across the
or
board raise.
whatever it was.
It's 3%.
3, okay.
Yes, they were, and in spite of that, like we're talking about, we can't get people. So, Brian, I really appreciate you picking up on that. Those discretionary funds back to that, that's not in case, we say, hey, let's buy pizzas for everybody. It's for things like this. We can't get bus drivers. We're canceling routes. We're calling up families and saying, sorry, there's no way to get your kid to school. I know you were counting on it, but we don't have it for you. This is a mid-year thing that we don't like to do. We like to be more proactive about this, and we thought we were being. You can see from the information in your packet, we're already paying more than Humboldt and Chino, but it's just not good enough. They're not going to Humboldt and Chino. They're going to, whatever, night transportation, and they're hauling catfish to Arkansas or something like that. So we're hopeful to get one less person to do that and to come and listen to kids scream in back of them while they get safely from point A to point B. And we're hopeful this will make a difference. And even more than recruiting, retention, right? We talked about this. Our bus drivers feeling valued. It's every job in our district is difficult and complicated. That's a particularly difficult, complicated job, as witnessed by the fact that we can't keep people doing it as well as we want to. We've got a fantastic transportation director. She works so well with those folks and makes their jobs as pleasant as possible, but it's challenging, and it doesn't pay a whole lot. So this is a move that we feel like we need to make. It's $30,000 we won't have available for other raises later on, or for curriculum, or something else. But we feel like this is where this money needs to, this one-time money for this year and ongoing money needs to be invested.
Are you aware of any initiatives to share services in this department, knowing that we have open enrollment and we have buses and within everybody's boundaries? I mean, getting creative with this, knowing we only have so many bus drivers that are following some of the same locations in town for kids that are, I'm not aware of it at the county level. We've done it with substitutes. Are you aware of anything that's been proposed in the last decade?
I know that we did share substitute drivers in the past, but we're not the only district suffering from lack of drivers. So right now, we're not sharing, just because we don't have the extra.
If we were to
Neither do they.
combine with other districts, it
Yes.
would make this situation probably worse instead of better, because there's such a dearth of people.
Good.
I will note that in addition to, this proposal, Kim and I have been working on other kind of some structural changes that we might be making with how we fill, especially if there's a bus driver absence or something. So we don't have, somebody has to call in sick and all of a sudden we have to call in or cancel a route, So kind of getting creative a little bit on that end as well.
So you could get qualified to drive the bus? Is that what you're saying?
It might be what we have to do, yeah.
On the consent agenda, it says a whole bunch of bus drivers in training replacement. What?
Yeah, so Kim can probably speak more to this, but we are sometimes able to find people, since we do offer training, which is a huge bonus, and that's something that Kim has worked hard to develop that. Unfortunately, they don't all pan out to become drivers, and so we're able to sometimes get people to say, yeah, I'm interested in that, and they sign up and they start the process. But Kim, how long does that process typically take?
It's 14 hours of classroom and 20 hours behind the wheel that they have to do in order to, and then of course pass their third-party test. So there are some that we have found can't even pass to get their permit. So when that happens, it stops, and we have to just continue on with somebody else.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Thanks, Kim, we appreciate you.
Welcome.
I will take a motion to adopt the proposed changes to the classified initial wage placement for an hourly rate increase for all current PUSD bus drivers. I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Any, yeah, motion is seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Sorry.
That was a long yawn there, Carmen.
Give her another, what do you, Pepsi, Diet Coke, or water?
I'm on to the water.
Good, water.
Thank you. I'm at half, so if we can.
Item 8B11, consider approving the proposed changes to the paraprofessional job descriptions. Andy?
Yeah, so I don't know how many years ago, several years ago, though, the paraprofessional position was split to reflect some of the different special ed programs that we offer. Obviously, different programs have different student needs, which means different kind of requirements for the paraprofessionals, and we kind of broke that position into 3 tiers. And at the time, kind of created some job descriptions around those. And as programs have evolved and changed and student needs have changed, working with Maya Caldwell, our special ed director, we've seen we need to be adjusting things. And so that's really where this came from. One of the, there's a few pretty minor changes in the 3 different job descriptions. One of the things we added was kind of spelling out the actual requirements that we're asking to make sure people understand what is required. But another one was how and what we're expecting in terms of behavior management. We've seen more of that, but we've always known that at all levels there would be some degree of having to deal with students in certain kind of escalated states, and we wanted to make sure that was reflected throughout really all 3, but especially in the tier 2 and 3 where the needs become higher at that level. So we included that and just made sure things like Medicaid billing was also included, since that's, again, one of those things that wasn't initially in there. So that's really where this comes from. Just make sure our job descriptions accurately reflect what the needs are in the classroom.
Thanks for doing that. And Maya for doing that too, please. Thanks. Any comments?
No, it just looks like we've added some information on their qualifications.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Just
and that's
the same,
actually, it's
yep.
really not a change. We've been telling people that for years. It's just
okay,
we
now
haven't
it's
had
in
it in
writing.
job
Procedurally, that's
description.
what we're required
Yeah.
to do, but we haven't clarified
But
that
now it's
within the job
actually-
description. I think that's a nice addition.
Right.
All right, I'll take a motion to approve the proposed changes to paraprofessional job descriptions.
I'll make that motion.
Motion and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, item 8C, information discussion items. Item 8C1, school board summary budget report. Mr. Moore.
As presented.
Anything? Thank you. Item 8C2, review of the proposed changes to the ASBA Policy Advisory 801 to 807, Volume 36, Number 5, from September 2024. And is this requires first and second reading? This is the first? All right, Andy?
Yeah, so again, this, based on some legal changes, this advisory comes out. I'll quickly go over them, and then, of course, like always, if there's specific questions you come up with throughout the next month, please reach out. But this, again, just being a first read. The first one was basically saying that our current policy says by October 30th, the board should meet to have a self-evaluation, and that this proposal says you can do it when you want to do it. That law is not in place anymore, and so if the board decides they want to do it in April, they can do it in April or any other time. So that's a change to that policy. The 802 relates to purchasing procedures, and really it's just about how we're documenting evidence of the decisions that made. I talked to Brian about this. He said those are procedures that are already being followed, so really no changes to how we do business. 803 and 804 are the same change, just one's for certified and one's for classified staff. Again, another change in policy, but really in the procedure's already been followed. It's based around a law that passed last spring that said we have to ask any applicant certain things, specifically around, have they committed certain crimes, or are they registered sex offenders or anything like that out of state. And so we've included that for the last several months already in our application process. Let's see, 805 related to a statement about all teachers in the district are required to participate in curriculum committees, and they've taken that out because, again, that's not in statute. Talked to Kelsey, and she said that's never a problem getting teachers, so we don't need to mandate it. No need to do that. Let me come back to 806. Let me skip over that, and I'll jump to 807. 807, the title is Medicines and Administering Medicines. The change that is in this policy actually relates not to administering medicines, but about how we prepare for any students who have a seizure plan. And a little over a year ago, some laws changed that said we have to have any staff who are in contact with students with the seizure plan have to have a certain training. The changes in this policy simply provide some documentation as far as the timelines. We have to have it renewed every 5 years. And we've been talking about, again, what that process will look like and making sure that we are adequately covered. But again, we've already been following that. And then the last one, going back to 806. 806 relates to animals in schools. That you should have in your packet a separate policy that reflects the current PUSD policy, which is different from the one that's in this initial packet. What the proposed changes are to this, really, there's a few minor changes that we are going to adopt, but we also are going to keep our existing policy components around therapy dogs in schools. The ASBA policy doesn't have any statements around therapy dogs, so we felt like that was important to continue to maintain. But the other ones talked a little bit about a lot of common sense things, like making sure that if an animal was brought to school, there's appropriate approval. Talked a little bit about liability, that the owner is liable for any damage or injury that occurs. So if there's any initial questions, I'm happy to try to answer them now, or like I said, it's just a first read, so if you have any questions between now and next month, please let me know.
Great. All right, item 8C3, request for future agenda items. I know we have one for summary of overseas travels, right? Anybody else? Any items?
Yes, I wanted a future agenda item on, and I don't know how we would go about this, with the bonus you get at the end of the year for, with your salary. I think we need more measurable goals, or what we are determining as increasing the test scores type of thing.
Okay,
So,
yeah, that's actually explicated pretty carefully in the current contract, but we can look over that and remind you of what you agreed to. Sure.
Yeah, annual contract.
Yep.
okay.
Anything else? All right. As a reminder, our next meeting is Wednesday, November 6th, at 5 o'clock right here. And then October 31st, Halloween, is Professional Development Day. Half day for students, or trick or treating. All right. We're adjourned. Thank you.